This is starting the second batch of videos about Chapter 12. In our first batch, we looked at recognizing when two variables are associated in a data set, but that didn't worry about how much evidence do we have or the sample size. So now, in this next set of videos, we're considering the effects of sample size. Let's remind ourselves quickly of some definitions. The conditional relative frequency has this definition, and a table shows association if conditional relative frequencies are different. But how different is different enough? Is 1% difference enough? Does the sample size matter? So that's the kind of thing we're going to be talking about. So that's what we're focusing on. So we're asking, is the difference we see plausibly just due to random sampling? Or if we used random assignment, is the difference we see plausibly just due to random assignment? Or we could ask, how different do they have to be to not be plausibly the same? And how does that answer depend on the sample size? Unfortunately, we end up not using the conditional relative frequencies to answer that question, but that's the question we'd like to answer. So here's the original table we had, and its conditional relative frequencies were these. And we didn't so we said, like, well, 23 to 46 is different than 22 versus 27, and so the conditional relative frequencies are different. Actually, just comparing the 46 and the 27 would say that. But what would the table have looked like if the conditional relative frequencies were the same? Would they all have to be 20% or something like that? So in just a sec, pause the video and ask, what numbers would have to go here to show no association in the table? Ready? 3, 2, 1, pause. Okay, welcome back from pause. You probably thought, well, these two numbers would have to be the same, these two numbers would have to be the same, these two numbers would have to be the same. But what number would they have to be the same? Would they both be 46? Would they both be 27? Would they be somewhere between 26 and 47? And it turns out the only way to arrange it is to have both of them be this number on the side here, kind of in the margin of the table. So to have this table show no association, you'd have to have this number be that number, and this number, so they'd all have to be that 26. Here they'd all have to be that 35%. And similarly here on that last row, well, we don't have much freedom. If these are already decided, we're kind of stuck with the same numbers here, right? So that's what it would have to look like for the table to have no association. This column would have to match that column, and this column would have to match that column too, and so these columns would match each other. So let's go take a look at it again. We said these numbers would have to match these numbers here in the margin. This is called the marginal distribution because it's in the margin of the table. If we had done the conditional relative frequencies by row, we would have a marginal distribution over here. So now that we know what it would look like based on the conditional and marginal relative frequencies, let's ask, what would the table of actual integers have been starting with the same totals in the rows and columns to show no association? So take a sec to think about, how could I compute this number, for example, to get a 22.6% there, but still, and then similarly for the rest, but still have these same column and row totals. So think about that. 3, 2, 1, pause. Welcome back from pause. Hopefully you were thinking something like, this 22% is 7 out of 31, and I want that 22% to apply to this column where I have 13 people. So I need to do something like 13 people times 7 out of 31. I'm kind of recomputing that 26%. Now I don't get an integer there, that's okay. We don't want to round it to integers. What we're saying is, if I sampled many, many times from a population that behaved independently between these two columns, and then took the average of all the numbers I got by sampling many, many times there, I would get 2.9. Averages are allowed to be non-integer. So there, I did that product. If I want to paste it in other cells of the table, I have to think about This number, I want to move it left and right. I want to let the column change, but keep the row the same when I move it up and down. So I have to put a $sign to lock the row number. This one I want to lock the column number, and this one I want to lock the grand total. There we go. So the numbers we'd have to have in the table, I'm going to paste those formulas. So this is what the table would have to look like to give these conditional relative frequencies, which show no association. They're the same from column to column, and they're the same as the marginal. So in the next video, we'll take another look at that.